Focus, focus. I'm speaking now to the Zodiac killer. Reveal your identity. His name was D.M. Faraday, and he was a second cousin to David Faraday, the first victim of his. His mother was Margaret Gibbons, and her older brother was Morton Raymond Gibbons, and he inherited the family home at 3979 Washington Street. And her sister was named Mary. And the Zodiac killer's father was named George Armand Faraday. And she married the Zodiac's father on September 28th, 1932. And you can see in this photograph her sister to the right. Now, Armand Faraday was really into the military when he was in high school. So much so, his friends nicknamed him Army instead of Armand. Now here's a look at his registration card for the Army during World War II. And you can see this and that. And then on the back you can see that he was 5'9" tall and he weighed 153 pounds. You can also see that when he was in high school, the school did a play, The Mikado. Now looking at this old silent era internet webpage, you can see that the Zodiac's father's father first married Rowena Salisbury, and they had a child, George Armand Faraday. And then his father divorced or separated from her, and he married Myra. And they had a child, Thomas Arthur Faraday, the father of David Faraday. Now she was 20 years younger than he was. How conniving that she could take advantage of an old man like that. And even in this notice in the paper, they lied about their ages. It says George was 38, but he was older than that. And it says that she was 21, but she was really 20. I couldn't find a photograph of her, but here's a photograph of her sister. And just look at her face there. How conniving. She probably married someone 30 years older than herself. The poor old guy. Now it's my understanding that the Zodiac's grandfather didn't attend his son's wedding because his son was upset that he left his mother and married another woman. So he was a no-show for the wedding. Now let's say it together now. The Zodiac killer was born on October 28th, 1936 in San Francisco. Now let's work the case backwards to Washington Street. So school's out for Christmas break, and David and Betty are going to meet up for a date. And David is to meet Betty at her house at 8 p.m. Now eventually that night, David Faraday pulls his mother's station wagon off of Lake Herman Road into the turnout at approximately 10:45 p.m. Now those of you really familiar with this case say no, it was like 10:20 or something. And I say BS. the witness that drove by and saw them was obviously mistaken, and it was later. And then the Zodiac killer pulled up next to him about 11:10, and James Owen drove by, and then the Zodiac killer got out and killed both David and Betty. And then he turned right and drove east out of there. Now I thought maybe there's a military connection to the victims of the Zodiac killer. So what I did is start with each victim and looked at their parents and researched their military experience. And I started with David Faraday's father, Thomas Faraday. And I learned that little Thomas lived in Alameda with his father in 1930 when he was 3 years old. And I learned that Thomas went to George Washington High School in San Francisco when he was older, and he lived at 633 6th Avenue. And I realized, hey, that's very close to the crime scene where Paul Stine was murdered. Then I believe I came across this document that has David Faraday's grandfather, and it has Army when he suddenly died at a young age in 1948. And then the big reveal was the bottom, 3979 Washington Street. And I immediately realized that's by the scene of the crime of the Paul Stine murder. Then came the most shocking find yet. After I created last week's video, I came across this when searching 3979 Washington Street. Haley Thatcher, 6, won this little contest. And I thought, Thatcher? That can't be right. So then I looked in the phone book or the city directory and found James Thatcher at 3979. And then, oh no, I realized I was all wrong. That Army's family no longer lived at that Washington Street address anymore. So the Zodiac wasn't heading towards that address that night. And I made a big goof. I didn't check this out thoroughly. I'm humiliated. There's no Washington Street connection. Now that doesn't eliminate my suspect. There would have to be some other connection, like maybe with the raccoon hunter Robert Kennelly, because they both lived in the San Rafael area and both attended the high school. But it looks like I goofed up. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved, and then I guess the search continues. And I'll see you next weekend with 2 new episodes. See ya.